The moment Sierra's mother slid that contract across our dinner table, I knew my marriage was over before it had even begun. Not the wedding, that circus would still happen, complete with overpriced flowers and her father's drunken toast about family values. But the actual partnership, that was done. "It's just standard practice, Ethan," Margaret Winters said, her manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany surface. "Successful families protect their investments." I picked up the document, scanning the legal jargon that basically boiled down to, "Give us your entire paycheck, your savings, and your dignity, then thank us for the privilege." Sierra sat beside me, avoiding eye contact, twirling her engagement ring like it might grant her 3 wishes. The first would probably be for me to disappear. "Interesting," I said, setting the papers down. "Very thorough. You've covered everything from my construction management salary to my weekend poker winnings. Though I notice there's nothing here about Sierra's income." Sierra's father, Harold, cleared his throat. "Well, naturally, Sierra's career in human resources requires certain discretions. Her salary needs to remain flexible for professional reasons." Professional reasons. Right. Like buying designer handbags and spa weekends with her friend Tara counted as business expenses. "Of course," I nodded, standing up from the table. "You know what? I need to grab a special pen for this. Something that matches the significance of the moment." Sierra finally looked at me, relief flooding her face. "Really? You'll sign it?" "Absolutely. This deserves the right kind of signature." I kissed her forehead, grabbed my keys, and walked out their front door. 20 minutes later, sitting in my truck outside First National Bank, I texted Sierra a photo of my new savings account. The one I'd just opened with half our joint funds, the half I'd contributed. The caption read, "Found that special pen. Thanks for the inspiration." My phone rang immediately. "Ethan, what the hell are you doing?" Sierra's voice cracked through the speaker. "Protecting my investment," I said, "just like your parents taught me." The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, "You can't do this. That money belongs to both of us." "Funny thing about that contract, Sierra. According to your parents, what's mine is yours, but what's yours stays yours. So I figured I'd make sure there was still a mine to discuss." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I hung up and drove home, humming along to the radio. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. That night, Sierra didn't come home. Her text said she was staying at Tara's to think things through. I spent the evening in my garage, organizing my tools and enjoying the silence. Mr. Tibbet, my elderly neighbor, knocked on the garage door around 9. "Evening, Ethan. Saw Sierra leave with a suitcase. Everything all right?" "Just fine, Mr. Tibbet. Sometimes people need space to figure out what they really want." He nodded knowingly. "My late wife used to say that when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Smart woman she was." "Sounds like it." After he left, I sat in my truck and thought about that contract. It wasn't just about money. It was about control. About turning me into some kind of domesticated pet who worked for their benefit and shut up about it. The scary part was how close I'd come to actually signing it, just to keep the peace. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over, Ethan. You made a big mistake today." "Harold?" I laughed out loud. These people really thought they could intimidate me with vague threats? I'd been managing construction crews for 8 years. I'd dealt with union bosses, city inspectors, and contractors who thought a handshake was just a suggestion. Harold Winters and his precious daughter were amateur hour. I texted back, "Looking forward to it." But as I headed inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just declared war on people who played dirtier than I realized. The next morning brought coffee, silence, and a call from my boss, Rick Morrison. That was unusual. Rick preferred face-to-face conversations, especially about anything important. "Ethan, we need to talk. My office, 8:30. "Sure thing. Everything okay?" "Just get here." I arrived at Morrison Construction to find Rick pacing behind his desk, looking like a man who'd swallowed something unpleasant. "Sit down," he said. "I got an interesting call yesterday evening, from Harold Winters." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Did you now?" "He's concerned about your mental state. Says you've been acting erratic, making poor financial decisions. He thinks the stress of the wedding might be affecting your work performance." I set my mug down carefully. "And what do you think, Rick?" "I think Harold Winters doesn't know jack about construction or the people who work in it. But I also think you should know he's sniffing around, asking questions about your projects, your reliability. He mentioned something about Sierra being worried you might do something reckless. Reckless like what? Like embezzling, like skimming from project budgets, like having a drinking problem. Rick held up his hand before I could respond. I told him he was full of garbage, but Ethan, you need to watch your back. These people have connections. I spent the rest of the morning doing exactly what Harold probably hoped I wouldn't, documenting everything, every project expense, every invoice, every receipt. If they wanted to play games with my reputation, I'd make sure my records were spotless. At lunch, I drove to the Anchor, a dive bar that served the best burgers in town and attracted the kind of crowd that knew everyone's business. Joe Martinez ran the place with an iron fist and ears that caught every whisper within a 5-mile radius. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Joe said, sliding a beer across the bar without being asked. "Heard you and the future missus had some excitement yesterday." News travels fast. "Honey, in this town, gossip travels faster than light. Sierra's been here twice since last night, crying into her cosmopolitan about how you've lost your mind." "Just twice?" Joe grinned. She brought Tara both times. Those two were huddled up in the corner booth, whispering like they were planning a bank heist. Tara kept talking about teaching you a lesson. "What kind of lesson?" "The kind that involves lawyers and accusations, if you ask me. But here's the thing. Sierra wasn't just upset. She was scared, really scared, like she knew something was coming." I took a long drink, processing that information. "Joe, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to keep tabs on their lying fiancée, what would you suggest?" "Hypothetically? I'd suggest that person remember that Sierra's phone is probably still on their family plan. Amazing what you can learn from phone bills and location services." "Smart woman, Joe." That evening, I sat in my garage with Sierra's phone records spread across my workbench. The numbers told an interesting story. Lots of calls to Tara, as expected, but also frequent calls to a number I didn't recognize, always during her supposed lunch breaks or late evening hours. A quick reverse lookup revealed the number belonged to Blake Harper, a local real estate agent with a reputation for expensive suits and cheaper morals. I'd seen his face on bus stop advertisements around town, all white teeth and perfect hair. My phone rang. Sierra. "Ethan, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at Rosario's, 7 o'clock? Rosario's was the Italian place where we'd had our first date. Either she was feeling nostalgic or she wanted witnesses for whatever she was planning. "I'll be there." I arrived early and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance and parking lot. Sierra walked in 10 minutes late, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. The hostess seated her across from me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "You look tired," she said finally. "I've had better weeks. How's Tara's couch?" "Comfortable enough." She fiddled with her napkin. "Ethan, I think we need to postpone the wedding." "Because of the contract?" "Because of everything. The way you reacted, the things you said to my parents, this whole situation with the bank account. It's like I don't even know you anymore." I leaned back in my chair. "That's funny, because I was just thinking the same thing about you." Her eyes flashed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've been doing some thinking, Sierra. About us, about our relationship, about why someone who supposedly loves me would ambush me with a contract designed to strip away everything I've worked for. It wasn't an ambush. It was exactly an ambush. And the follow-up call to my boss? That was just good strategy, right?" She had the grace to look embarrassed. "Daddy was just concerned. Daddy was trying to get me fired. There's a difference." The waiter approached, but Sierra waved him away. "Fine. You want to know the truth? My parents think you're not good enough for me. They think I'm making a mistake." "And what do you think?" She was quiet for a long time. "I think maybe they're right." There it was. The truth, finally, sitting between us like a loaded weapon. "Well," I said, standing up and dropping a 20 on the table, "at least we agree on something." I walked out of Rosario's feeling lighter than I had in months. The pretending was over. Now the real fun could begin. 2 weeks later, the annual summer bash arrived like a carnival of small-town gossip and overpriced funnel cake. Sierra had moved back home with her parents, and the whole town was buzzing about our temporary separation. I decided to make an appearance anyway, partly because I'd already bought tickets, and partly because I was curious to see how Sierra and her new social circle would handle my presence. I found my answer at the beer tent. Sierra stood near the back corner, laughing at something Blake Harper was whispering in her ear. He had his hand on her lower back, and she was leaning into him like they'd been together for years, instead of whatever this was. Tara flanked them, scanning the crowd like a bodyguard. Well, well, I said, approaching with 2 beers in hand. Blake Harper, right? I've seen your ads around town. Blake straightened up, his salesman smile sliding into place. That's right, and you must be Ethan. Sierra's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope. I offered him one of the beers. So, Blake, what's your specialty? Residential, commercial, or do you focus more on existing properties? His smile flickered. Sierra stepped between us. Ethan, what are you doing here? Same thing as everyone else. Enjoying our charming community festival. I took a sip of my beer. Though I have to say, Blake, your timing is impressive. Most people wait until the divorce is final before moving in on someone's wife. We're not married yet, Sierra snapped. Yet being the key word, I agreed. Blake, quick question. When you're showing Sierra around, do you mention that some properties come with existing liens? Blake's face was turning red. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts, like the fact that Sierra is still wearing my ring, or that her phone is still on my family plan. Amazing what you can learn from phone records. Tara finally spoke up. You're stalking her, Ethan. That's harassment. Is it harassment to pay attention to my own phone bill? Interesting legal theory. A small crowd had started to gather, drawn by the tension. Blake seemed to realize this wasn't going the way he'd planned. Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding at all. You're sleeping with my fiancée, and she's lying about it. Pretty straightforward situation. Blake took a step forward. You need to watch your mouth. Or what? You'll sell me a house? List my property without permission? I stepped closer, matching his stance. Here's the thing, Blake. I work construction. I deal with guys who think they're tough every single day. You sell houses to soccer moms. So maybe think twice before you try to intimidate me. He raised his hand like he was going to push me, and I shifted my weight. Ready. But instead of contact, I stepped backward, bumping into the beer tent's support pole. The cooler on top wobbled, then tipped, dumping ice and beer all over Blake's pristine white polo shirt. The crowd burst into laughter. Blake stood there, dripping and furious, while Sierra tried to help him clean up. I raised my remaining beer in a toast. Sorry about that, Blake. Guess I'm just clumsy around other people's property. I walked away to the sound of people chuckling and whispering. By tomorrow, the whole town would know that Sierra Winters was cheating on her fiancé with Blake Harper, and that Blake had gotten humiliated in front of half the community. That should have been enough. Should have been the end of it. But when I got back to my truck, all 4 tires were flat, and someone had keyed loser into the driver's side door. I called my buddy Mick from work to come pick me up. While I waited, I took pictures of the damage and noticed something interesting. Tire tracks in the dirt nearby that looked like they came from Sierra's Honda. And was that Tara's lipstick on the ground near my truck? Jesus, Ethan, Mick said when he arrived. They really did a number on your ride. Yeah, they did. But you know what? I think they just made a big mistake. How's that? They escalated. Up until now, this was just about a broken engagement and hurt feelings. But vandalizing my truck? That's criminal mischief. And I'm pretty sure they left evidence. Mick grinned. So what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to stop playing defense. The beauty of working construction is that you learn to solve problems with your hands and your brain. You also meet people who know how to handle situations that require creative solutions. Mick had a cousin who ran a towing service, and that cousin owed Mick a favor. 3 days after the festival incident, Blake Harper's pristine BMW disappeared from his condo parking lot at 2 a.m. Technically, it was legally towed. The parking space belonged to a unit that had been foreclosed on, and the new owners, Mick's cousin's business partner, had requested all unauthorized vehicles be removed. Blake would get his car back eventually, after paying towing fees and storage costs, but not before spending a very uncomfortable morning explaining to his real estate clients why he couldn't make his appointments. That same morning, I made a visit to Sierra's office building. She worked on the 3rd floor in human resources. I worked with the building's maintenance contract on the 5th floor. Amazing how much access a hard hat and a clipboard can provide. I found Sierra at her desk, on the phone with Blake, judging by her frustrated tone. I don't care how it happened, Blake. Figure it out. No, I can't leave work to drive you around, because some of us have actual jobs that require showing up. She noticed me standing in her doorway and quickly ended the call. What do you want, Ethan? Just dropping off some paperwork for the building manager. Couldn't help but overhear. Blake having car trouble. You know exactly what happened to his car. Do I? That's a serious accusation, Sierra. I hope you have proof. She stood up, crossing her arms. I know you, Ethan. This has your fingerprints all over it. Actually, it has the fingerprints of a legitimate towing company responding to a property owner's complaint. But I can see how you might be confused, given your recent struggles with understanding legal boundaries. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out a folder and set it on her desk. It means I've been doing some research about company policies regarding personal use of office resources, about harassment protocols, about what happens when HR personnel abuse their access to employee information. Her face went pale. You never what? Never used company resources to investigate me? Never shared my personal information with your parents? Never attempted to damage my professional reputation using your position? I opened the folder, revealing printed emails, phone records, and a very interesting document. This is a formal complaint I'm filing with your supervisor, Sierra. It details how you've been using your HR access to dig up information about my work performance, my salary, my benefits package, information you then shared with your parents so they could try to get me fired. She sank back into her chair. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. See, the thing about working in an office building is that everything is logged. Computer access, phone calls, printer usage, and your friend Tara made a very interesting mistake last week. I pulled out another document. She called my boss, pretending to be a reference checker for a job I supposedly applied for. Asked a lot of specific questions about my reliability, my honesty, my financial situation. The problem is, she called from her personal phone, and Rick Morrison has caller ID. Sierra stared at the papers like they might catch fire. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stop using your position to harass me. You're going to tell your parents to back off, and you're going to think very carefully about your next move, because I'm not the pushover you thought I was. I picked up the folder. Oh, and Sierra? Blake's car will be returned as soon as he pays the towing fees, assuming he can figure out which impound lot it's at. There are so many in the city. I left her sitting there, staring at her phone like it might explode. That evening, I met Mick at the Anchor for a beer and an update. How'd she take it? He asked. About as well as you'd expect. But here's the thing. She's scared now. Really scared. Which means she's going to do something desperate. Joe slid 2 beers across the bar. Speaking of desperate, you boys might want to know that Tara was in here earlier, making phone calls and taking notes. Looked like she was planning something. What kind of something? The kind that involves lawyers and accusations, if I had to guess. She kept mentioning evidence and patterns of behavior. Mick frowned. You think they're going to try to get you arrested? Maybe. Or maybe they're just trying to scare me into backing down. I took a long drink. Either way, I think it's time to escalate. What did you have in mind? I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo I'd taken earlier. Blake's condo has security cameras, but they're all focused on the parking lot and main entrance. The back patio, completely unmonitored. And Blake left his sliding door unlocked. Amazing how careless people can be with home security. Joe raised an eyebrow. Please tell me you're not planning to break into his place. Break in? No. But if someone were to, say, leave some fish in his air vents, or put super glue in his door locks, or rearrange his furniture in creative ways, well, that would be unfortunate. Mick grinned. You're evil, Ethan. I respect that. I'm practical. They want to play games? Fine. But they're about to learn that I'm much better at this than they are. The smell hit Blake's condo building 3 days later. By the time he figured out where it was coming from, the sardine oil I'd poured into his air conditioning vents had created an aromatic disaster that would take weeks to fully eliminate. The superglue in his mailbox was just a bonus, a small, petty touch that made me smile every time I thought about it. But the real masterpiece was the note I'd left on his bathroom mirror, written in washable marker. Alpha male, beta hygiene. Upgrade your character, Blake. Sierra called me that evening, her voice shaking with rage. You're insane, Ethan. Completely insane. I'm sorry, are you accusing me of something specific? Because that sounds like slander. Don't play games with me. I know you did something to Blake's condo. Did I? Interesting theory. I hope Blake has some evidence to support that claim, because false accusations can be expensive in court. This has to stop. I agree completely. All Blake has to do is stay away from my fiancée, and all these unfortunate coincidences will probably stop happening. I'm not your fiancé anymore, Ethan. We're done. Are we? Because you're still wearing my ring. You're still living in your parents' house instead of getting your own place, and you're still sneaking around with Blake instead of being honest about what you want. She was quiet for a long moment. What do you want from me? I want you to stop pretending to be a victim. I want you to take responsibility for your choices, and I want you to understand that actions have consequences. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You and your family tried to control me, manipulate me. And when that didn't work, you tried to destroy my reputation and my career. Did you really think I was just going to roll over and take it? We never You never what, Sierra? Never conspired with your parents to get me fired? Never used your position at work to dig up dirt on me? Never vandalized my truck when I embarrassed your boyfriend at the festival? Silence. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to return my ring, you're going to sign a statement acknowledging that our engagement is over and that you have no claim to any of my assets. And you're going to do it publicly, so there's no confusion about where we stand. And if I don't, then this gets much worse for everyone involved. Your choice. She hung up without another word. 2 hours later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sierra, Blake, and Tara standing on my porch like some kind of dysfunctional intervention committee. We need to talk, Sierra said. I stepped aside and let them in, leading them to my living room. Blake looked around like he was casing the place, while Tara clutched her purse like it contained nuclear launch codes. Nice place, Blake said, trying to sound casual. Very lived in. Thanks. I like to think of it as authentic, unlike some people I know. Sierra sat on the edge of my couch. Ethan, this has gone far enough. We're willing to make a deal. What kind of deal? Blake reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. $5,000. Cash. You take it, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we all move on with our lives. I looked at the envelope, then at the three of them. You want to pay me to keep quiet about Sierra's affair? We want to pay you to stop harassing us, Tara said. What you've been doing is stalking. It's criminal behavior. Is it? Because from where I sit, I've been defending myself against people who tried to steal my money, destroy my career, and vandalize my property. But please tell me more about criminal behavior. Blake stood up, trying to look intimidating. Look, man, we're trying to be reasonable here. Take the money and walk away. Or what? Or we go to the police. We have documentation of your harassment, your stalking, your vandalism. Do you? That's fascinating. I'd love to see this documentation. I walked over to my desk and pulled out a thick folder. Because I have some documentation, too. Phone records showing Sierra's affair, email logs proving she abused her position at work, security footage from the festival showing Tara vandalizing my truck, and my personal favorite, a recording of Tara calling my boss and lying about me. Tara's face went white. You can't record phone calls without consent. Actually, I can, since Rick Morrison was the one being called, and he consented to the recording. Amazing what you can learn when you actually understand the law. I opened the folder and spread the contents across my coffee table. Photos, documents, printed emails, call logs, 3 months of careful documentation. Here's my counteroffer, I said. Sierra returns my ring and signs a statement ending our engagement. Blake stops contacting me, my employer, and anyone else in my life. Tara deletes my phone number and pretends I don't exist. And all of you stay out of my business from now on. And if we don't? Sierra asked. Then tomorrow morning, copies of all this evidence go to your HR department, Blake's real estate license board, and every major gossip in town. By noon, everyone will know exactly what kind of people you really are. Blake grabbed the envelope back. You're bluffing. Am I? Sierra, tell Blake about the time I spent 6 months documenting a contractor who was skimming materials from our job sites. Tell him how that ended for the contractor. Sierra looked at Blake, then back at me. He got fired and blacklisted from every construction company in the state. And that was just about money. This is about my life, my reputation, and my future. How far do you think I'll go to protect those things? The room went quiet. Outside, I could hear Mr. Tibbet watering his garden and humming an old song. Normal life, continuing while we sat here playing games with each other's futures. Finally, Sierra reached into her purse and pulled out my ring. Fine, she said, setting it on the coffee table. We're done. All of us, I said, looking at Blake and Tara. This ends here. Blake nodded reluctantly. Tara just stared at the floor. After they left, I sat in my living room, looking at the ring Sierra had returned. It felt lighter than I remembered, like it had lost something essential during the months she'd worn it. My phone rang. Mick. How'd it go? It's over. They backed down. Good. You sound disappointed. Maybe a little. Part of me was looking forward to the fight. There'll be other fights, brother. There always are. Yeah, but this one was personal. That's what made it worth winning. I hung up and put the ring in my desk drawer, next to all the evidence I'd gathered. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of officially ending the engagement, updating my insurance beneficiaries, and moving forward with my life. But tonight, I was going to sit in my garage, drink a beer, and enjoy the silence of a war finally won. I should have known it wasn't over. 3 weeks after our confrontation, I arrived at work to find Rick Morrison waiting in the parking lot, his face grim. "We need to talk, Ethan. Now." He led me to his office and closed the door. On his desk sat a stack of papers and a laptop displaying what looked like financial records. "I got a call yesterday from the State Construction Board," Rick said. "They're opening an investigation into alleged embezzlement and fraud on the Riverside Mall project." My stomach dropped. "What kind of allegations?" "The kind that come with documentation, bank records, invoices, payment authorizations. Someone put together a very convincing case that you've been skimming money from material purchases and inflating labor costs." I sat down hard. "Rick, you know that's garbage. I've never stolen a penny from this company." "I know that. You know that. But the evidence says otherwise." He turned the laptop screen toward me. "Look at this." The screen showed a series of bank deposits to an account I'd never seen before, but somehow bearing my name and social security number. Purchase orders with my signature authorizing payments to companies that didn't exist. Timesheets showing hours I'd never worked. "This is fake," I said. "All of it. Someone manufactured this." "I believe you, but it's convincing fake. Professional quality. The kind of thing that takes time and money to put together." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. "How long have they been planning this?" "Months, probably, maybe since before your engagement ended." Rick closed the laptop. "Ethan, I have to suspend you pending the investigation. I don't have a choice." I nodded, understanding. "Any idea who filed the complaint?" "Anonymous tip. But the documentation came through a law firm downtown. Winters, Blackstone and Associates." "Sierra's uncle's firm." "Of course." I cleaned out my desk while Rick watched, both of us knowing this was probably goodbye. Even if the investigation cleared me, the damage to my reputation would be permanent. No construction company would hire someone who'd been accused of embezzlement, regardless of the outcome. That evening, I sat in my garage, staring at the evidence folder I'd assembled against Sierra and her allies. It felt pathetic now, like bringing a knife to a gunfight. They'd been planning this nuclear option while I was playing pranks with sardine oil and superglue. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Ethan, it's Linda." My sister's voice was tight with anger. "I just heard about what happened at work." News travels fast. Faster when your ex-fiancé's best friend is bragging about it at the grocery store. Tara couldn't keep her mouth shut about how they finally got you. I sat up straighter. "She was bragging?" "Oh, she was practically gloating, talking about how you thought you were so smart. But they were always 3 steps ahead. How Blake's cousin works for some forensic accounting firm and helped them put together the fake evidence. Blake's cousin, another piece of the puzzle. Linda, I need you to do something for me. Can you go back to that grocery store and see if Tara's still running her mouth?" "Why?" "Because if she's bragging about framing me, she might say something incriminating. And if she does, I want it recorded. Ethan, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to stop playing defense." The next morning, I drove to Blake's condo. His BMW was back in its parking spot, freshly detailed but probably still carrying a faint aroma of fish. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:15, Blake emerged, dressed in his usual expensive suit. He got in his car and drove toward downtown. I followed at a distance, watching as he pulled into the parking lot of a small accounting office on Maple Street. Harper and Associates, Blake's cousin's firm. I parked down the block and called the number on their sign. "Harper and Associates, this is Janet." "Hi, I'm calling about some forensic accounting work. I understand you specialize in creative documentation?" "I'm sorry, I don't understand." "Let me be more specific. I'm looking for the kind of service Blake Harper arranged for the Ethan Rowley situation. Very impressive work." The line went quiet for a moment. Then, "I think you have the wrong number." She hung up, but not before I heard her say, "Blake, we have a problem," to someone in the background. That afternoon, Linda called with an update. "Jackpot," she said. "Tara spent 20 minutes at the coffee shop telling anyone who'd listen about how they set you up. I got most of it on my phone." "What did she say?" "Everything. How Blake's cousin created the fake bank account. How Sierra used her HR access to get your social security number and employment history. How they've been planning this for months, waiting for the right moment to destroy you." "Did she mention the law firm?" "Oh, she was very proud of that part. Apparently Sierra's uncle didn't know what the documents were really for. They told him it was for a civil lawsuit, not a criminal frame job." I smiled for the first time in days. "Linda, you're brilliant." "What's the plan?" "I'm going to give them exactly what they wanted. A public confrontation, but this time, I'm going to be ready. The summer bash was in 2 days. The whole town would be there, including Sierra, Blake, Tara, and everyone else who'd been following our drama. It would be the perfect stage for the final act. I spent the next 48 hours preparing, making copies of Linda's recording, researching Blake's cousin's business license, contacting Sierra's uncle's law firm to clarify some details about the case against me. By Saturday morning, I had everything I needed. The festival was crowded, the same mix of families, teenagers, and gossips that showed up every year. I found Sierra and Blake near the main stage, surrounded by their usual circle of supporters. Tara was there, of course, along with several other people I recognized from around town. I approached slowly, carrying a small speaker and my phone. "Sierra," I called out, "we need to talk." She turned, her face immediately defensive. "Ethan, don't start anything here." "Start anything? I just wanted to thank you." That got everyone's attention. Blake stepped closer, probably expecting another confrontation. "Thank me for what?" "For teaching me so much about the people I thought I knew." I held up my phone. "For instance, I learned that Tara has trouble keeping secrets when she's excited." Tara's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I connected my phone to the speaker and hit play. Tara's voice filled the air, clear and unmistakable. Blake's cousin created the fake bank account using Ethan's information. Sierra got his social security number from her HR files. We've been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect time to destroy him. He thought he was so smart with his little pranks, but we were always 3 steps ahead. The crowd around us had grown larger, drawn by the drama. People were pulling out their phones, recording everything. "Turn that off," Blake demanded, reaching for my phone. I stepped back. "Why? It's just Tara sharing the truth about your brilliant plan. Though I have to say, using your cousin's accounting firm wasn't very smart, especially since they're not licensed for forensic work." Blake froze. "What?" "Harper and Associates. Your cousin's firm. They don't have a forensic accounting license, which means any documentation they created is automatically suspect. The state board is very interested in talking to them." Sierra grabbed my arm. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Ask your uncle. I called his law firm yesterday to clarify some details about the case. Turns out he's very unhappy about being used to file fraudulent documents. Something about disbarment and criminal charges." The color drained from Sierra's face. Around us, the crowd was murmuring, phones still recording. "But here's my favorite part," I continued, raising my voice so everyone could hear. "The bank account you used to frame me, the one with all those suspicious deposits, it was opened using a fake ID, which makes this identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Federal crimes, all of them." Tara started crying. Blake looked like he was going to be sick. Sierra just stood there, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "The FBI Financial Crimes Unit is very interested in your little scheme," I said. "Turns out they take identity theft seriously, especially when it's part of a conspiracy to file false criminal charges." "You can't prove any of that," Blake said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out a folder and handed copies of documents to several people in the crowd. Bank records showing the fake account was opened with forged documents. Security footage from the bank showing Blake's cousin during the account opening. Phone records proving coordination between all the conspirators. And of course Tara's confession, which she was kind enough to provide in multiple public locations. Sierra finally found her voice. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want Blake to explain to his real estate clients why he's about to be arrested for federal crimes. And I want Tara to think about whether bragging was worth spending the next few years in prison." I looked around at the crowd, at all the phones recording our conversation. Most of all, I want everyone here to remember this moment. Remember what happens when people think they can destroy someone just because they're inconvenient. Remember that sometimes the underdog has sharper teeth than you expect. I packed up my speaker and folder, leaving Sierra, Blake, and Tara standing there in front of half the town, exposed and humiliated. As I walked away, I could hear the crowd buzzing with excitement, already spreading the story to anyone who'd listen. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know the truth about Sierra Winters and her conspiracy to frame her ex-fiancé. I got in my truck and drove home, feeling lighter than I had in months. The investigation would clear me now. The real evidence would prove my innocence and expose their crimes. My reputation would recover, my life would move forward. But more than that, I'd learned something important about myself. I'd learned that when pushed to the edge, I didn't break. I pushed back, harder, smarter, and more effectively than anyone expected. The underdog had won, and it felt exactly as good as I'd hoped it would.